I love scary. I love crying. Seriously, I love feeling on the edge of pain. It's so amazing because you're breaking through stuff. You're a chick in a shell and the light's coming in. It's going to be painful to leave the shell, right? And the first stage of people in the victim mentality is you live in the shell. The first stage is I live inside of the shell, okay? There's people that they're in their head completely. They don't even know about this, right? Sometimes you might have a breakthrough, which is like the light coming into the shell. That's the second stage where there's a new thing, right? So now you're in this bind, and a lot of people here are at least in that place because it's like, I got the old story, but I see a possibility. Because if you're just in the first one, you'd be like, this is an insult to you. That's how people see. If they're just in their head, this is really insulting that I could tell you how to live your life. That's the kind of thing they think that I'm doing, which really all we're saying is you learn to live your own life. But that's what happens. This is an insult because it's outside of the boundary. So the shell is that first stage where you're only a chick in a shell. The next one is something happened, you had a glimpse of light, and now there's two of you, right? So the third stage is you choose to crawl out of it. That's that by me stage where you're going to get out of the shell, and you're going to be on the outside of it. And you're going to look back at the shell. So there's some people here that you can see that were butterflies that are scared to be butterflies, so they hang out and live with the caterpillars and move like the caterpillars. And if a butterfly has to hang out with a caterpillar, it has to clip its wings. It's going to take it a month to cross the street because you have to move at the pace of the caterpillar, right? Because the caterpillar can't fly and be like you, right? So the caterpillar has to learn by doing things and losing their butterflies in their life. Right? The caterpillar has to learn that there's another life. Otherwise, it feels justified because caterpillars mainly exist and stay connected through their connection to other caterpillars because they don't have the connection to themselves. Right? So you need justification in the way you're being by getting a lot of them together and all feeling that way. This is why bullies come in groups often. Right? And so the third stage is you're now outside of the shell, and you're looking back at the shell, and sometimes you're trying to get back in it because there's an old story, but it's too late. You know too much. This crowd knows too much. And that's one of the biggest things about awareness is the higher the awareness, the less off track you can get. And the more stress you get, the stress is only coming from how much you're willing to meet your level of awareness and move from your level of awareness. So there's some people that have very simple awareness and life is really easy for them because it's easy to meet. There's some people on this planet, and I really say this with absolute equal love for everyone, but there's some people on this planet who are like, do I have my Cheetos? Okay, good. That's the level. Like, I just got the thing, the team won the game, good. And that's awesome. And that doesn't mean that they should change. That's where their awareness is. There's absolutely no judgment, and there's no like saying one is higher than the other, truly, because all 18 speeds on a bike serve the same purpose, right? You need one and you need 18. They're all equally needed. A caterpillar had to learn how to be a caterpillar before it could learn to be a butterfly, but all of those steps are needed. That's why life is so fun, because you get so many different stages, right? But the third one is you're out of the shell, but you're looking back at your old story. So you're hanging on to caterpillary stuff, or you're hanging on to the shell. The fourth stage is when you realize, even though you had to break through it and get out of the shell, the fourth stage is when you realize the shell is a figment of your imagination, and it's not even real. So when you keep meditating and you start really loving yourself, you start to realize the shell is a story in your head and it's not real. But at first, and I say this because sometimes people try to go from 1 to 4 and they use 4 as an excuse. They use 4 as an excuse to stay in 1. Like if you hear from this thing, you know, when I say things like, all of it doesn't matter, we're just love, sometimes people use that as an excuse to stay mean to other people, to stay lazy, and they go, well, it doesn't matter, none of this matters anyway. I was supposed to happen because it did. I can just not pay my credit card bills anymore and do these terrible things because this thing's a dream and it doesn't matter. So you still need to learn to access the love in you before you let go. And so sometimes people come to my events and they'll be really young and I'll talk about letting go of my job and they'll just quit their job but not realize that there wasn't a calling to. Like they weren't trying to, they didn't need to. So I think of the different stages also, because all I can do is analogies. I think of different stages as a balloon. There's the balloon that hasn't been blown up. Then you have to blow it up, and you have to see that you can blow up a balloon. And then when the balloon finally gets too big, you got to pop it. But what some people do is they try to rush from 1 to 4, which would be taking a balloon that had no air in it and just poking holes in it. And now you're using consciousness and transformation as an excuse to never blow up your balloon, right? So the third stage is you're looking back and you keep having reminiscent feelings of the old times in the shell and you want to be in there. And the fourth one is when you realize there is no shell. But you have to totally see the shell first and not think there is no shell while you're in the shell. So there is a shell at first if you're in your head. Your head has to achieve something, which is making an intention and getting out of the shell. The next stage is, okay, I see the shell, I'm in that light, I see it. So some people, they're in their shell and they're encased and they're supposed to be. That the baby needs to stay in for 9 months, right? It has to stay in the shell until it's time, until life finally kicks its ass. And I say that so much because don't pull people out of their shells that aren't ready to get out of their shells. People are all in different stages, and the factor for why you're having this growth isn't because of what I'm saying, but it's much more about the stage that you're in right now, and the people around you aren't in the same stage. So when people leave seminars, they go, you got to do this. When I left Tony Robbins at first, as you heard, I just made my mom go. I was like, you need to do this. And then I started preaching to everybody how it worked. But the factor of what caused my change was I was in a low. I was in a suicidal anxiety and wide open to hearing. If it had been a year before, I would have been like, this is crazy. This Tony Robbins stuff's crazy was what I would have thought, right? So the first stage, you're in the shell. Second stage, you see there's a light. Everyone in here has to, unless you were dragged in here and you're just like dying, there's no way you would have made it this far if you were in that first stage. If you like this, what I'm doing is I'm calling more attention to that light that you've been scared of but you know is there. So you're moving out of the shell, you're moving out of the light, and you're getting into a more light. And we're getting you out of the shell. Or you're a person that's already outside of the shell and just getting some more permission from butterfly talk to just be outside of the shell. Or you're in the fourth stage, which is like, yeah, just there's a little bit of remaining shell here, but it's all in here. And I'm outside of the shell, and now I move with my body and my soul and my heart.